Robert Corsini has been up here several times, and so Robert Corsini is a widely respected documentary filmmaker, producer, and writer. He is the owner of Videocratic Media, and Robert Corsini is responsible for filming the videos that we've been seeing and that we will continue to see today.
Just not saying, I'm being very inept here. I apologize. Why don't you? Let's move on.
We have to move on.
And if Mr. Rhode is ready? Oh, great. Stephen Rhode is a civil liberties activist, historian, and writer who, while he was an attorney, practiced constitutional law for over 45 years. He is the former chair of the ACLU Foundation of Southern California and the author of American Words of Freedom and Freedom of Assembly. Mr. Rhode is also a contributor to the Los Angeles Review of Books. Mr. Rhode will be discussing the publications and disclosures by Julian Assange and WikiLeaks that led to the persecution and prosecution of Assange.
Come on, let's shoot. You're going to hear that again in a few moments from the collateral murder video. It's very important that we open this entire program with the full-length collateral murder video, and we're going to be showing excerpts of it during my remarks. It is the most forceful display of the importance of, I must begin with Chelsea Manning, in perhaps the first time we've mentioned her here today, who had the courage to leak this information in the first place, and is herself the victim of U.S. law and persecution and torture. But she had the courage to do that, and Julian Assange had the courage to publish what she leaked. And today we're emphasizing the collateral murder video because it is the most striking and dramatic and compelling evidence of the millions of documents which Julian Assange published as a journalist and for which he stands extradition from England to face charges under the shameful, infamous Espionage Act of 1917. I want to join everyone who's been up here so far in applauding and recommending the book in defense of Julian Assange. This is an extraordinary piece of journalism in its own right. It is indispensable to anyone who wants to understand an accurate portrayal of Julian Assange, the man and the publisher. It is filled with insightful essays and discussions, only a portion, a fraction of which we can scratch the surface with today, and that's why that book is on sale today for $20, and those seeing this video should go online to purchase In Defense of Julian Assange.
Get it right here.
Get it
right here.
I just said that for $20, but if you're online and watching this by video, then you're not in this room, and you should buy it anyway. I want to set the context very briefly of the chronology of this important case, because the chronology which is published in the book is very important and gets lost in a lot of the demonizing and trivializing of Julian Assange. It was in October of 2006 that WikiLeaks registered its domain name and began its work. I'll be emphasizing those portions of what it released that relate to today's program, but the breadth and depth beyond U.S. war crimes of what WikiLeaks has released is extraordinary in its own right. For example, in November of 2007, WikiLeaks published a copy of the U.S. Army's 2003 Standard Operating procedure for Camp Delta, the protocol manual for soldiers stationed at Guantanamo Bay. But it was in the beginning of 2010 that we draw our attention. In February of 2010, WikiLeaks released the Reykjavik 13 cable relating to the IceSave scandal, which is beyond the scope today, but that was considered the first release of the first document by Chelsea Manning. But it was in April of 2010 that WikiLeaks released the collateral murder video, a classified gun sight video of a U.S. Army Apache helicopter's targeted fire on unarmed civilians in Baghdad on July 12, 2007. That means no news source, no independent mainstream news source, nobody else had been able to obtain and publish that video for those 3 years until WikiLeaks did so after the help and support of Chelsea Manning. Over 12 civilians were killed, including 2 Reuters reporters, and 2 children were injured. Let's take a closer look at the first part of the collateral murder video.
Last conversation, Hotel 26. Hotel 26, you want your hotel,
That black vehicle, right to the north of the mall.
yeah, I would like that over.
Moving south by the mall still, on that road.
Roger that. We have no personnel east of our position. So, you are free to engage over.
Alright, we'll be engaged.
Roger, go ahead. I'm going to have to get them down there behind that building. Any personnel that top
We got an RPG. Alright, we got an RPG.
You want to fire?
Oh, well, come around.
We got to go ahead. That's from our point of view. Behind the building. He was right in front of the bridge. There, 1 o'clock. Haven't seen anything since then.
Just fucking, once you get on the over, I'll get running.
I see you're over. You got about 400 feet. How long is
You're clear.
what's the stage line now? Let me know when you get it.
Item all up.
Come on, fire. Right.
Keep shooting. Keep shooting.
We need to move time now.
Alright, we just engaged all 8 individuals.
Still fire.
Sorry.
Flip over. We got this.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
God damn it, Scott.
Alright, let's take it.
you're clear. I'm just trying to find targets again. That's the sector, but that's the 2 sector. And a bunch of bodies laying there? We got about 8 individuals. Yeah, we got one guy crawling around down there, but we could definitely get him out. Or shooting some more. Hey, you shoot alcohol. Hotel 26, Crazy Horse 18. Crazy Horse 18, this is Hotel 26. They're currently engaging approximately 8 individuals, KIA, RPGs, and AK-47s. Hotel 26, you need to move to that location once Crazy Horse is done and get pictures off.
We have engaged all 8 unarmed individuals. The best evidence is the alleged weapons were cameras strapped behind Reuters reporters. The United States and Iraqi officials never allowed an on-the-ground investigation of this massacre. This is a war crime right before your very eyes. Before 1 o'clock today, how many people in this audience have seen Collateral Murder? Well, I love this audience because for those watching, I'd say upwards of 75% of the people in this room have seen this. Have you seen it on CNN? Have you seen it on MSNBC? Have you seen it anywhere in the mainstream media? No. But this is what Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange was able to share with the world, in addition to scores of other documents. WikiLeaks continued to do so, and it was in May and June of 2010 that the U.S. military arrested Chelsea Manning and court-martialed her. She was put in solitary confinement and subjected to inhumane torture. It was in July that WikiLeaks published the Afghan war logs, 75,000 of the 91,000 U.S. military documents on the Afghan war. And they continue to do so. I had intended to detail even more of these disclosures, but all you have to do is buy the book and read the chronology for yourself. This is what Julian Assange is being persecuted and prosecuted for. Now, it was only in December of 2010, while Assange was being demonized, that the late Democratic Representative John Conyers, of blessed memory, chair of the House Judiciary Committee, held a hearing on the espionage and WikiLeaks. And what he said there should be repeated here. Quote, "The repeated calls from members of Congress, the government, journalists, and other experts crying out for criminal prosecution and other extreme measures caused me some consternation," he understated. "Indeed, when everyone in this town is joined together calling for someone's head, it's a pretty good sign. We sure want to slow down and take a closer look." Well, the United States government and Congress and the mainstream media have never slowed down. It gets worse, and here is the second part video when rescuers came to care for what they didn't know were the dead and wounded, and this is what your government did then.
Hotel 26, Crazy Horse 18. Oh yeah, I've been on dead bastards. Nice. 26, Crazy Horse 18. Nice. Good shoot. Thank you. Hotel 26, Crazy Horse 18. Crazy Horse 18, 157, go ahead. Postmaster 7, Crazy Horse 1-8, location of bodies, Bravo, 5458-8617. 5458-8617. It's Crazy Horse 1-8, that's a good copy. They're on the street in front of an open courtyard with a bunch of blue trucks, a bunch of vehicles in the courtyard. One guy moving down there, but he's out there. He's one guy to the south. All right, we'll let him down. We'll take care of him. Get over here. It's 1-8. We also have one individual appears to be wounded. I'll try to call away. Roger. We're going to move down there. Roger, we'll see fire. Yeah, we won't shoot anyone. Any other weapon downstairs? No, I haven't seen one yet.
Haven't seen one yet, a weapon.
I can see around there, and you guys are shooting over there too, so we'll see. Postmaster 36L, this is Hotel 27 over. Hotel 27, go ahead. Roger, I'm just trying to make sure that you guys have my turbos. Roger, we have to come on, buddy. I gotta just pick up a weapon. Ready for the 20 minutes of time. Put that full break. Yeah, right below you, right time now. Can you walk us onto that location over? This is 2-6, Roger. I'm players. We also have one individual moving. We're looking for weapons. We see a weapon, we're going to engage. That's Postmaster. We have a location. There's a coaching is taking up the bodies. Where's that man here? Right down there by the body. Okay, yeah. Postmaster, Crazy Horse. We have individuals going to the scene. Looks like possibly picking up bodies and weapons. Hey, we need to stop that. We need that. We need to stop that. You see my look? Roger. Frank, Crazy Horse 1-8, request permission to engage. Captain Logan. Come on, let's shoot.
Come on, let's shoot.
Postmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8. You're taking him. Postmaster, Crazy Horse 1-8. This one Master 7, go ahead. Roger, we have a black issue with our Mongo truck picking up the bodies and request permission to engage. This one Master 7, Roger. This one Master 7, Roger, engage. 1-8, engage. Clear. Come on. Clear. Clear. Work. Coming around clear. Roger. Trying to clear. I lost him. I got him.
They got him.
I'm sorry.
They asked how good Germans could have ever done what the Nazis did. How could good soldiers go to war and do what they did? These are American soldiers, eager, anxious, yearning to pull the trigger and to kill all of those innocent people. It is tragic, and we owe it to Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning. I cut my time short so that we could see these videos. I want to close with a statement prepared for this program today by John Kiriakou. John Kiriakou is a former CIA officer who blew the whistle on CIA torture by telling ABC News that the CIA was torturing prisoners. He became the 6th whistleblower indicted by the Obama administration under the Espionage Act. Those are whistleblowers indicted under the Espionage Act. Julian Assange is the first publisher and journalist indicted under the Espionage Act. And John spent 23 months in prison as a result of his revelations. He tells us today, "I'm honored to support Julian Assange in his quest for freedom and in his larger fight for transparency. It was Julian who in 2010 told the world the United States was committing war crimes in Iraq. It was Julian who later told Americans, thanks to the Snowden revelations, that the United States was spying on its own people. Is Julian controversial? Yes, he is. But truth tellers often are. And WikiLeaks has never had to retract a story, ever. Now the full weight of the U.S. government has come down on his head, and Julian is being prosecuted under the Espionage Act, a law designed to punish spies. This case is bigger than just Julian Assange. This case is about press freedom and freedom of speech. It's about transparency and official corruption. It's about frightening other journalists into keeping their mouths shut when they uncover evidence of waste, fraud, abuse, or illegality. That's why we have to stand with Julian Assange. Thank you very much.